Mr. Gareth Davies, how are we, sir?
I'm good, and as is tradition, Adi Oladipo, you did a very good job on Saturday night with all those heavyweights surrounding you. I think you did about 9 heavyweight interviews. I have just
It
spent the
was.
entire last week around the Parker Wardley, now it's Wardley Parker event, and thoroughly interred and in depth in the heavyweight division right now. It's alive. You?
It is alive. It is alive. There are several monsters as well. Several, as you said, I was on stage with about 6 of them or 8 of them, if you include Jarrell Miller, who's the size of 2 heavyweights in there. Let's jump straight in. There's so much to unpack from that main event. We'll probably touch on the undercard as well, but it's all about the main event. You were as close to ringside as possible. And you had actually, looking at where you sat, you had the best vantage point of anyone. Was it a fair stoppage?
At the time, I thought it was slightly premature. And I differ from other people who, at the time, they thought it was right, and watching it back, they thought it was premature. At the time, I thought it was slightly premature. The more I've seen the highlights, the more I think Howard Foster was within his rights to do it, even though it was a tad too early, but rather 10 seconds early than 10 seconds late. I've always been that kind of guy. I don't want to see a guy prostrate on the ground. I don't want to see a guy carried out on a stretcher. I don't want to see someone hurt on a night where they had taken a lot of punches, both of them, and where Joseph Parker's will was leaving his body in that round as well.
Yeah.
So I've got, yes, it's a debating point. Yes, it's slightly controversial. Yes, it's Howard Foster, i.e. George Groves and Carl Froch just over 10 years ago, and obviously the architect of that rematch as he was. But I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Why do British referees, comparing it to American refs, why do British referees not do what American refs do when they say, show me something? Like American refs will scream,
Yeah.
show me something. And that almost makes the guy or the girl kind of show they have something left. British refs don't do that, do they? They don't give you that almost 10-second warning that they're about to jump in.
Well, I think they do sometimes, but I think you're right. I think Howard Foster could have done that. And also, he would have
Mm,
been looking at the fact that Parker didn't have the wherewithal at the time to hold. He could have
yeah,
held
yeah.
as well. There was 1 minute and 6 seconds left in that 11th round. I had Parker 7-3 up at the time in rounds, by the way. Wardley had almost got him out of there at the end of the second round as well when Parker spat his gum shield out, and maybe made a technical error by not letting the fight go on because there wasn't really a pause in the action at the time. There's no standing 10 count now, standing 8 count now, which might have given Parker a reprieve and
Yeah.
let him gather himself and give Wardley a 10-8 round in that round, which would have made it closer. There's lots of woulda, shoulda, couldas, but it is what it is. I haven't heard, apart from a couple of times, massive remonstrations from
Yeah.
the Parker camp, from Andy Lee, from Spencer Brown, from others around him. There could be a rematch. I could see a rematch.
Mm-hmm.
But there's obviously lots of different ramifications to play out in the division. Bottom line, Eddie, is it's an absolute fairy tale prize fighting story for Fabio Wardley. And in a way, for British sports fans, let's get behind this guy because he deserves it. And we should be urging Usyk to come to Wembley Stadium and fight him there because I think if we make Fabio Wardley a big enough figure, and again, he's got a puncher's chance against Alexander Usyk, I reckon we could get enough people to Wembley Stadium to fill it.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more with all your statements there. I initially thought the stoppage was early. Ringside, I was like, oh, what's he done? Then watching it back, there was, I don't know, 40 unanswered punches. Now, a lot of them weren't cracking on the jaw
Mm.
punches. A lot of them were just kind of swinging and missing. But if you're Howard Foster, you're thinking, you've not shown me anything, Joseph. I've got to jump in because you're not doing anything. You're almost curled
Yeah.
up. So I agree. Having watched it back, it wasn't the best, but it also wasn't the worst stoppage I've ever seen. And if you are going to be upset about an early stoppage, your best time to moan is in the immediate aftermath of a fight. But obviously, Andy Lee and Joseph Parker left, Spencer Brown left, and that was the best time. I actually made a beeline for them, thinking they were going to say something, but then they left the ring. So, yeah, I don't think they've said anything at all. I think Joseph has been quite humble about it. And now I'm fully with you. We need to get behind Fabio Wardley. I mean, that boy is a superstar. He really is. I mean, he had 20,000 at Portman Road and it was pouring down. And it surprised me to hear him have the majority of the crowd in the O2 just because everyone loves Joseph Parker. His story is just sensational. Honestly, it's incredible. I mean, I'm sure you must have wrote so many pieces about him in the Telegraph because he has everything. He's got the look, he speaks so well, and he gives you, there isn't, actually a question to you, Gav. Is there a boxer now that gives you more value for money when you buy your ticket than Fabio Wardley?
No, I don't think there is. That's a very good point, Addy. And like you say, the nuanced narrative of his life with Shoni Lee, his mum, who was sitting right behind me. I got her on the talkSPORT broadcast when you were doing your post-fight interviews. I got her by my microphone. I said, were you worried about your son in there during that incredible battle? She said, no, I was just worried for Joseph Parker because I know what my son's capable of. A great storyline. He's very articulate and well spoken. He's the kind of guy that can appeal in the mainstream to the British public. I really do think they can get behind him. Yes, he does entertain, and he's gone from headhunter in an office to headhunter, proper headhunter in a ring in 8 years, and now sitting on the cusp of either, if Alexander Usyk doesn't fight him, of having the WBO belt in his retention in his own home, and if Alexander Usyk does fight him, it's just an incredible story of a kid that's come from nowhere with Rob Hodgins and Matt and Zach and all the guys at Suffolk Punch, with Ben Davison and Lee Wiley bolted on top of that. It's just an unbelievable rise for a guy who, yes, is very athletic, very powerful, but has gone to the top of the sport. Only in the heavyweight division could you do this, I think.
Yeah, and I'm happy you mentioned his team from Suffolk Punch as well, because that shows loyalty as well. Because obviously he's got to a certain level, and most people would say, okay, unfortunately, guys, I also have to go to that other level. And rather than leave them, he's brought on Ben Davison and Lee Wiley to almost make a bit of a super team. So I think that shows something about him. He obviously praised Dillian Whyte for finding him, if you like, and giving him the opportunity. So there's a loyalty to him as well, which I think is very, very good. Where do you have him, Gareth, now in these heavyweight rankings?
Number 3.
Obviously, when I did the interview, number 3, yeah? Okay.
Behind
So
Usyk
just
and
Cabial
Fury.
above him.
Behind Usyk and Fury.
Wow. Okay. Also, you have him above Cabial?
Yes, at the moment, because of inactivity.
Ooh.
Because of Cabial's inactivity. I'm not saying that Cabial couldn't beat him, or that it's not an amazing fight, or that Cabial isn't slightly more complete as a fighter, but based on what Fabio's done and who Parker's beaten and what Fabio's now done against Parker, I've got him at 3.
Okay.
You?
Before we hear, I've got him just below Cabial. But again, even to have him at number 4 is incredible for a guy that laced up the gloves 10 years ago. I mean, again, only in the heavyweight division. He's making a mockery of boxing, to be honest. To be ranked number 4 is sensational for someone that was fighting white-collar accountants 10 years ago. I find it madness.
It is madness.
It is madness,
It is, but he is a rare specimen. He's got the kind of chin. Look what Parker's just done against Zhang and Wilder. I know Wilder was coming to the end, but look what he's done against Piccoli, against dangerous killers in the heavyweight division. And yet, look at his punch resistance. Look at his chin. Look at the size of his cojones and his heart. Look at his resilience and his determination, and look at his power, and also his very unorthodox moves to get away. Now, I'm not saying that Usyk wouldn't be capable of finding that left uppercut where he ducks away, and he will land on the left uppercut. Joseph Parker, lots of his overhand bolo rights were missing, and he should have been finding the uppercut for those punches when Fabio was ducking away. But Fabio has something special. There's no doubt about it, and he's got something in him that is not usual in a human being, and he really is a good guy being bad in the ring, and that's why we've got to get behind him, Eddie, and we genuinely get behind him and get the British public behind him, because he thoroughly deserved it. I think he probably got $1 million for that on Saturday night, if $1 million. Parker got 3.2 million US dollars, $1 million US dollars for it. This kid deserves a massive payday and some massive fights. Think about him in fights with Dubois. Imagine what that's going to be like. Fights with Kabayel, fights with Ituma. There's some massive fights, if not a fight with Usyk, which you're going to go on to.
No, I'm not yet. I want to go back to what you just said there, because I think I see a problem brewing. Ituma. And I asked Ituma on stage, I said, this is strange, right? I mean, you guys are in the gym. You can't have two alpha males in the same weight class with the same ambition, both ranked in the top 10 in the same gym for me, Gareth. And I hope I'm not causing a problem here or causing trouble. But for me, I can't see how that isn't an issue.
Well, it is an issue. It is an issue. I've got Ituma at 6 at the moment, by the way, as well, based on how brilliant we think he's going to be. At some point there's going to be a very messy divorce, and maybe that. But we mentioned Suffolk Punch, the Suffolk Punch guys. That maybe at some point Fabio's going to have to go back up to camp in Suffolk, and Ituma, because I can't see Ben Davison, Lee Wiley, and Barry Smith giving up Moses Ituma as their pupil. But it's a fight we've got to see at some point,
Have to.
I mean, it's thrilling. That's a Wembley Stadium fight again. It's a Wembley Stadium fight.
Yeah, it's aside from AJ Fury, which may or may not happen, we'll get to that. It's now become the most British heavyweight fight I want to see next. It's that. And I'm like, it's very, very awkward, especially considering Moses obviously just flatlined Fabio's co-manager in Dillian Whyte. So there's stories there as well. So I'm like, I feel like there's a problem brewing, and it's something that's going to have to come crashing down very, very soon. All right, let's hear from Fabio Wardley. He spoke post-fight, and the one name that he mentioned, and rightly so, and we've been speaking about it, was Alexander Usyk.
Alexander Usyk will get mandated, you'll get mandated to fight Usyk next. Obviously, that's the fight that you want.
100%. There's nothing I want more. Nothing I want more. All the belts, all the marbles, let's go.
Listen, O2 Arena absolutely packed tonight for you, my friend, and you've done it again. You pulled off another memorable victory. Congratulations, mate.
Thank you.
Do we get to see that fight, Gareth? Do you think, like, hand on heart, do we see in the summer Alexander Usyk take on Fabio Wardley, or does Alexander Usyk vacate?
Well, at this moment, having spoken to Frank Warren yesterday at length, about these very things we're discussing now, and about the resonance of Fabio Wardley with the British public, and how he needs to be built another level, and how he needs to be projected as a new star being born in British sport. I think it comes down to the ability to sell it commercially to Alexander Usyk on the one hand, so that if it is Wembley Stadium, and if you can get a Ring magazine behind it as well for extra funds, if Usyk secondarily, Eddie, so A, the commercial viability, and B, if Usyk's looking at it and thinking, right, this kid's got an incredible chin, I'm probably going to have to fight him hard for 12 rounds. Yeah, but he is going to be thinking this. Yeah, I can beat him, but I am going to have to go through flaming hell and back, because he's going to keep coming. It's a bit like, if I go back to Andy Lee saying to Parker, I heard the corner. We had the corner access on the microphones. After 9, Andy Lee was, or 8 or 9, Parker's 5-3 up. Or 6-3 up at 9, going, just box him now, just box him. It's very hard to just box a guy who is taking everything, all your artillery, and the shells are shooting out of the back of the cannon, and the missiles are just bouncing off him, and he just goes like this and just keeps coming forward, which is what he was doing. If Usyk's looking at that, he might think, I'm 39 in January. Do I really fancy that? He's just had 24 rounds with Tyson Fury in his last two. He got rid of Dubois handily. He ain't getting rid of Fabio Wardley like that. So it will depend on those two factors, in my view. But I do hope we get the fight, because Usyk's popular enough here. I think it's 100,000 Ukrainians living in our country, which we saw in the Dubois fight. He's very popular at Wembley. Half the crowd is for him, if not more. So I like to kind of project out there. I don't know what you think. I think it can happen, and I do want it to happen.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to pounds and pence. You're right. They'll show Usyk a number, and if that number makes sense, he'll probably take the fight. It's whether or not, you're right, they can get the backing of Riyadh season fully to almost bring that purses up. And as you say, whether they can get 90,000 in Wembley to make a lot of money from the gate. But I would love to see Usyk take on the challenge, because I'd love to see a master boxer against a supreme puncher, and see if Usyk can still do it at 39 to avoid, as you say, what will be missiles from round 1 to 12. Like, I think we've seen now that Fabio's a puncher from the first. Like, I was so scared for Parker, and like everything just whistled past his head. But you felt like at any time he could detonate. And when he did detonate, it showed. He had Parker out there in the second round. Could have knocked Parker out in the second round, which is incredible. Quick word on Andy Lee. Obviously, look, I think we all praise Andy Lee as one of the top coaches, not just in boxing over here, but in the world. But it's been a bad sort of last couple of months. Obviously, he's two charges that he's had for the longest have suffered defeats in their biggest fights, Paddy Donovan and now Joseph Parker. I guess that's what it is at the very elite level, right? Your fighters are going to win some and lose some. But it has been a bad couple of months for Andy Lee.
Well, it has, but I'd also say I was at Crawford Canelo, Terence Crawford, Saul Canelo Alvarez in Vegas, as you know, on the night you were at Crocker versus Donovan 2, Paddy Donovan and Crocker 2 at where was it, in Belfast, wasn't it?
Windsor Park.
Windsor Park. But that was a very close fight, which could have gone either way. And some people feel that Donovan won that fight. And Donovan won the first fight but got disqualified. So I think we can excuse that. And Andy Lee was still giving Parker the right advice in the corner, as I said. So a hard time for him, but not as hard as it is for his fighters, to be honest, because Paddy was there on Saturday night and he's still feeling it, as he told many people, but he'll be back. And there's still fights there for Joseph Parker. That he's...
Go on then. What is the fight next? Say Joseph Parker comes, October now, so good rest, 6 months, April, May. Who's Joseph Parker in the ring with? I mean, there was a few heavyweights I was on stage with, right? I mean, he could fight any of those guys.
Well,
there are loads of names, but what's realistic?
Well, he can fight the winner of... We're going to go on to this in a minute, but he could fight the winner of Ajit Kabayel and Daniel Dubois. He could fight Lawrence Okoli. He could fight... He could fight in a rematch against... I'd watch a rematch with those two. I think we're going to get the same kind of war. There's plenty of fights out there for him, but he is going to have to regroup mentally after that and emotionally, not just physically. And I was wondering during the contest, I had Paul Smith to my right and Spencer Oliver and Andy Clark on the team. And my feeling with them, even though I wasn't chipping in much on commentary on the night because I was doing the presenting role, was that extra stone and a half may have cost Joe. That extra weight may have cost him later on in the fight. And it looked like that might be the way. So, he can rebuild. He's an asset to the heavyweight division. And we're still ranking him I've still got him at 5 in the division. It wasn't a terrible performance by any means. But he just didn't seem to hurt Fabio,
Crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah, when you think of that extra size as well, that extra bulk was to absorb some shots, but also to deliver some big bombs as well. And he's 20 pounds above what we're used to seeing him in, and he still couldn't detonate on Fabio. So Fabio's not just got punch power, he's got incredible punch resistance, which makes him a dangerous man for any heavyweight in the world. Let's hope we do get to see Fabio Wardley versus the great Alexander Usyk in the summer at Tottenham or Wembley. That would be incredible. You know, it would be incredible, actually, considering that Usyk's been the Brit basher for the best part of a decade. It would be incredible if it is Fabio Wardley that stops the run. Like, who would have dreamt that? It's just boxing is an incredible sport. All right, let's unpack some of the who's who of boxing that were ringside on Saturday night. And it's only right that we start with one of the main men of British boxing of all time, Mr. GK himself. Tyson Fury was in attendance, looked good as well. Now, Tyson Fury did an interview for his own energy drink, who have a YouTube channel, Ferocity TV. You can also hear part of this interview, by the way, on talkSPORT's boxing YouTube page. I want to mention, I think it's important, that this interview was done a month ago. I think that's important because, as we know, Tyson Fury likes to wake up and change his mind quite a lot. But this is what Tyson Fury said a month ago about his plans to return to the ring.
There's no Gypsy King in this this life, just a normal retired life. The Gypsy King's dead. You get to a certain level, a certain point in your life and career, and it's not really about anything else anymore. You've done everything you wanted to do. You've achieved everything. Like at them points, like the last 5 years of my career, I've been 2-time world champion. I made enough money to retire on. It's like it doesn't anything now is a bonus. You know what I mean? So like I've not really spoke to Usyk since the fight, but yeah, I know he's said some stuff like not negative stuff, like good stuff. Like he wouldn't mind a third fight. Obviously, it's a big payday for him, isn't it? And for me also, but. It's just like, for me now, what's the point? Like, if you give me another 100 million, what am I going to do with it? Like
Tyson Fury there, Gareth, saying he has no plans to return to the ring. $1 billion wouldn't return him to the ring. But I always feel every time I see Tyson Fury at a boxing event, he gets itchy knuckles, itchy feet, and we could see him change his mind.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, there is a caveat here with those quotes or with that interview with him, that it was done before he attended Saturday night. That depends with his bipolarity what day it is often. I spoke to his brother Shane at length, and I've been speaking to Spencer Brown, his manager. He wants the third fight with Alexander Usyk above all other fights. That is the fight he wants. If you speak to Frank Warren behind the scenes and Spencer Brown behind the scenes, and I say as Shane, Big Shane, his brother, that they've picked over the bones of the last two fights he had with Alexander Usyk, and they were close fights. I don't care what anyone says, but I had Usyk winning both fights convincingly. But they have the belief that is the fight that he really wants out to go into, so that he's pursuing that fight with Alexander Usyk. So as we said in the first section, if it makes commercial sense, Fabio Wardley and Alexander Usyk may happen. But if it makes commercial sense, Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk may happen. Now, whether Fury needs a warm-up in the interim, that remains to be seen. But he doesn't seem to be expressing, even on Saturday night and round the houses again, to the great desire to fight Anthony Joshua. Which is a great travesty for me. And I think that ship is genuine. I said it on breakfast on talkSPORT on Monday morning. I really do think that ship is beginning to sail now, Eddie. I think it's going to get past its sell-by date soon if we don't have a date for it some point next year, and that isn't resolved in the near future.
Why do you think that is? I spoke to Spencer Brown on Friday. He joined us at the weigh-in. And I asked him, like, look, what's going on with Tyson Fury? And he's like, look, unless someone can deliver 2 truckloads of cash, like Tyson, and I get it, right? I mean, pay him as much as he's worth, and Tyson Fury's worth a lot of money commercially. He's one of the biggest draws in boxing, but so is Anthony Joshua. In my head, like you get your 2 truckloads of cash fighting AJ. Like it's a guaranteed windfall. And it's something I do believe that Riyadh season would get involved in. I think Turkey would love to see that fight, right? These are 2 fighters that have fought on Riyadh season, have done very well on Riyadh season. Why is he constantly pouring cold water on such a big fight?
It doesn't make.
Why do you think he is?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for me. Well, because he wants to avenge his defeats to Usyk. That's burning away inside him. And, there is slight jeopardy against Anthony Joshua. I still think I've always thought Tyson Fury defeats Anthony Joshua. You may think differently because I'm accused of being the fanboy of one. You're the fanboy of the other. But again, Tyson Fury isn't what he was. I think. Yeah. Maybe AJ isn't what he was either. But I do listen. I'm not saying I wouldn't like to see the fight because it does bookend the era, certainly for us in the UK. But also, it's one of the biggest fights in the world anyway. Let's be honest. If those two step into a ring, we'd all watch it. But that thing where we say, "Oh, the fight could happen anytime," I do think we're coming to the end of that ingestion period for it. That it's coming. Agreed. It's almost, if we haven't got,
we're there. We're kind of there. We're ready.
We are, and I'm not one given saying, "Well, I'm not really interested in the fight anymore," but it's starting to seep into me. And we live and breathe these things in our daily lives, you and I. It's what we do. But the longer it goes, and we know we're going for a whole calendar year with no Joshua fight, no Fury fight. Joshua's going to be on an undercard in Africa. Oh, no, he's not now. I missed him on Saturday night because with Fury, Wardley, Kabayel, Parker, Ituma, Dubois, Whyte, Chisora, Miller, and Okoli all there, right?
Joe Joyce.
And Joe Joyce. Wow. And David Adelaide. Well. With all those guys there, we missed AJ there. And the Brotherhood of Heavyweights, because he would have been celebrated there on Saturday night. And I've said this on a couple of interviews I've done. You should have come, Anthony, because you would have been celebrated by everyone there. And you are part of that brotherhood. And maybe he doesn't feel a part of it at times. And he was a missing part for me on Saturday night. To have had him there as well would have been amazing. Do you not agree?
I couldn't agree more. I hate that we don't see AJ at these events, especially because you had the old guard there and the new guard, and AJ is very much part of the old guard, and his image would have come on the big screens, and I do believe he would have been cheered.
Of course.
And I wonder if he knows that.
Yeah, exactly.
Does he not know that?
Exactly. That's my point. I think he feels like an outsider. He needs to know he's not. He needs to know he's loved. He's part of this brotherhood of heavyweights. If he'd been there on Saturday night, we'd have had the whole generation there. And it would have been a celebration. It did feel like a celebration of our heavyweights on Saturday night, didn't it, when we were there? I mean, you were in the middle of them. You and Frank, not dwarfed, but when those big guys...
No, dwarfed by these 18, 19 stone monsters.
And then Miller comes from off
stage.
Right,
the one missing. Yeah, and the one missing was AJ, and it's a shame because then... It just, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. And you're right to mention that there was this rumor of AJ fighting on the undercard of this proposed December 20th Matchroom fight card in Ghana, and that seems to have vanished now. So I'm guessing that's not going to happen.
There's no point.
So it's like, what is going on?
There's no point. There's a couple of fights out there for AJ. In my view, it's the Deontay Wilder. I'm blue in the face. Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and... Is there a third fight for him?
Dubois rematch?
Well, Dubois is going to fight Kabayel in Germany in January. So,
really,
yes.
Is that? Have you just broke this?
That's what they're looking at. Yeah, Dubois against Kabayel. Yeah, in Germany.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I love Dubois. When I had all those guys on stage, I was hoping for someone to give me a bit of energy, and it was quite. Let's be honest, it was quite dull. Apart from Dubois. It was like, I'm ready to go now. I'll fight anyone right now. And I was like, this is what I need. And credit to him because he's someone that is coming off a big defeat, but let's not forget what he's done in the last 12 to 18 months. And, most people say they'll fight anyone. I think Dubois has clearly shown in his resume in the last 2 years that he will fight anyone. So let's see what happens in the heavyweight division. Chisora versus Whyte, all but confirmed. Would you make of that?
Yeah, good. It looks like it might be the 20th of December. Reading through between the lines of all the talk, and it was like Moses is off December the 13th.
Yeah.
I spoke to Frank about this yesterday. It looks like they'll wait for the outcome of Kubrat Pulev and Murat Gassiev on December the 12th in Dubai at the IBA press conference symposium, amateur championships. So then Moses will come out in January or February. Sorry, slightly later than that, but probably fight the winner. I like the interpolation of Chisora. It was a troublesome human being on Saturday night, causing wreckage and carnage everywhere, almost drawing Dillian. A brilliant but moody and magnificent Dillian into a lot of different chats. I do like it now. I've seen them together. Dillian seems up for it, and I'm really pleased about that.
He does.
He
does. And I thought Dillian might... I also thought he might shy away a little bit because of what happened in Riyadh, getting stopped in the first round. I thought, okay, are we going to see Dillian? Is he just going to sort of disappear and we don't see it? But I'm happy that, he still looks in fantastic shape. You can see his jawline. Yeah. He looks like he is ready to go. And I don't mind this being the trilogy, especially if it's the final fight for both. I almost feel like it's a perfect way to end. And it will be violent. And yes, both are not what they used to be in their first and second fights, but they've almost come down together at the same rate. If not, Chisora's maybe stayed around a bit longer, actually. So I think it's a good fight. Obviously, there's talk of it being on pay-per-view, and they will need to bolster the pay-per-view because there does seem to be a lot of chatter now about pay-per-view events and are they worth it, etc., etc. But I do think as a main event, these guys will deliver. I think it will be an exceptional brawl.
Yeah, it's a battle of who's got the most left, and I wonder if they're going to move it to London now rather than have it in Manchester as well. But I think with these two, regardless of where it is, they're so popular. They're both cult figures, and as I say, Derek will wind Dillian up, and Dillian will be moody with him, and we'll get enough from it that it'll sell out an arena and hopefully do well on pay-per-view for them both. It may be both of their last fights, to be honest. So, I'm glad to see them together. I preferred, and I told Derek this last week. I was on a call with him when I was out socialising, that I preferred the Jarrell Miller fight because I thought it would create more heat. But since seeing them together on Saturday night, and they have got chemistry, Dillian and Derek, I think it's a good fight. It's a really good fight.
Yeah.
Really good fight.
I couldn't agree more. Let's see if we get a date very, very soon, because the 20th of December does sort of it messes up a little bit of the Nigerian fight on the 19th. This rumored December 20th card in Ghana. So let's see what happens there and see where the chips fall. All right, let's switch gears a bit and hear from one of the, I think, best promoters in the business. Without doubt, I think a top 20 fighter of all time. I'm talking about Golden Boy president, the great Oscar De La Hoya. Gareth spoke to him earlier this week. A number of subjects came up. Obviously, Virgil Ortiz, one of his number one charges, takes on Erickson Lubin in
Texas.
A couple of weeks. Yeah. A couple of weeks' time. He spoke about a potential 5 versus 5 with Eddie Hearn or Frank Warren, and spoke about what is almost vanishing, disappearing heavyweight division when it comes to American boxing as well. Let's hear a bit of that. This is Gareth A. Davies and Oscar De La Hoya.
It could potentially be a 5v5 that night as well. Is there any talk of that?
We haven't actually talked about a 5-on-5. It's been a second now. I know several months ago or a year ago, we were talking about doing 5-on-5 Golden Boy versus Matchroom or US versus UK. It would have been an interesting event to put together. I think the fact that Eddie Hearn focuses a lot more on heavyweights and middleweights, and it would be a little difficult at this point now, but I think it's an interesting concept for the US and for UK boxing. I think Golden Boy versus Matchroom would be pretty amazing with some top names. But yeah, the fight that we're really looking forward to and that people are very interested in is Virgil Ortiz versus Boots Ennis next year, which I have no reservations on making. I think Virgil, getting past Lubin, would create an amazing fight down the road for Boots and Virgil.
30 years ago, Oscar, you were the Ring Magazine Fighter of the Year. I'm sorry to say 30 years ago, but it was 1995, the Ring Magazine Fighter of the Year.
Yeah.
And between, just looking at records, because we forget things
Sure.
as we get older, we need to remind ourselves. And
Right.
the young generation watching and boxing often don't look back in history.
Sure.
You were that man in 1995, the star of the sport. Pound for pound, arguably, in 3 years around that time. Between 1994 and 2008, you were fighting in, I think you fought in Madison Square Garden, but you were in Los Angeles or you were in Vegas, and all the big fights in Vegas.
Sure.
94 to 2008, back to 95, 30 years have gone. How does American boxing compare now to what it was 30 years ago, in your view, honestly?
Yeah, it's nowhere even close to what it was. Yeah, it's nowhere even close to what it was. I think
because there were the heavyweights around as well, weren't there? As well as your weights.
you have the exciting fighters and big names in the 90s, like Tyson and myself. Even Julio Cesar Chavez was still fighting. Trinidad and Shane Mosley, and we were all fighting each other. Ike Corte and Fernando Vargas. But you had the heavyweight division, very active here in the U.S. And I think boxing in the U.S. right now, there's a lot of talent. Okay, there's tons of talent, but I think what U.S. boxing is missing is there's no continuity. There's no fights where we're watching on a continuous basis. There's one fight here, and then the next one's in Riyadh, and then the next ones are in the UK. The time change is different, so the focus hasn't really been on the US. I kind of feel.
Yeah,
we have tons of talent. Don't get me wrong, but but we need more fights here in the US. We need more Las Vegas fights.
You two are quite similar. Very, very colourful bunch of characters, you and Oscar De La Hoya. But I think Oscar's done so well, especially with what seems like not a dying sport in America, boxing, but it isn't what it used to be. I think Oscar sort of spoke about that as well. It isn't what it used to be when Oscar was fighting. But Oscar's always reinvented himself. He's always found talent. And obviously he spoke about Virgil Ortiz, who fights Erickson Lubin, who's probably, probably one of his best fighters on that resume now, under the Golden Boy umbrella.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think probably, apart from Ryan Garcia, Virgil Ortiz is probably the star of his stable right now. And he's a brilliant fighter as well. Look what he did against Israel Madrimov in comparison with Terence Crawford and what he's achieved. I mean, Virgil is a kid I've known for a long time, and I've always had a close relationship with him. And I've always tried to he's one of those guys I've always urged on to do more. Like he plays the piano and the guitar, for example. And I've always said, bring a piano into the ring after you've fought and won, and take your gloves off and your wraps off and play the piano for us, or play your guitar, but just to push him forward to become resonant for some reason, because he's a very quiet guy, but he only knows one way to fight, Virgil, which is go to war. And that's why that Boots Ennis, as he talks about, the Boots Ennis fight, if Virgil comes through Erickson Lubin, which I think he will on November the 8th in Texas, to create this super fight next year. The big thing about Oscar is, and I did...
Clap back Thursday, baby. Clap back Thursday.
I am such a fan of Clap Back Thursday. He said, well, brother, the thing is about Clap Back Thursday, because I said, it's so funny. He said, it might be funny, but it's only facts. And what he does is he goes right to the bone, doesn't he? And it is humorous. And I think Holly writes it with him. Holly Saunders writes it with him. They have a lot of fun. I love those two together. And as you rightly say, I go back in the day with Oscar, a very, very long way back in the day, where 30 years ago, he was the Ring Magazine Fighter of the Year. For 2 years around that time as well, he was considered arguably number one pound for pound in the world as well. Like you say, and I agree with you, Ed, I think he's in the top 20 all time of great fighters. Let's celebrate these things. For a world champion from super featherweight to middleweight, 6 weight divisions, unbelievable career, and the most successful promoter who's an ex-boxer, in my view, in history. And because people ridicule Oscar because he has his moments, but it was a great chat. I wanted an hour with him. I only got 17 minutes. I wanted an hour because it's rare when you get time on your own with him. And that was what was so special yesterday. The heavyweight division was fascinating talking to him about it because I said, you look at when you were in your pomp between 1994 and 2008, when he was in his pomp and fought everyone, he was in Vegas fighting 2-3 times a year, or in Los Angeles, a couple of times in Madison Square Garden. I said, how has boxing changed in those 30 years in America? And he went into the, not boxing's broken, but God, it's so different. And he said, what we're lacking is, we heard him, was structure. And a narrative for the heavyweights, narrative for fighters. He said we get big events and then we don't seem to get the structure after it, the follow-up, which we've got here. And then
why can't he? I consider him, obviously, look, Bob Arum is Bob, so Bob's number one. Until Bob decides to move on from the sport, Bob's number. Why couldn't Oscar create that narrative? Why couldn't he build what he's been a promoter for well over a decade now? Why can't he do it?
Well, I said that to him. I said, right, take a magic wand. I said, I went through that heavyweight division we've been talking about on the show. I said, where's the flaming American? He said, look, I've got my one guy, as he mentioned, I've got my one guy who's coming through. But outside that, if DAZN gave me a magic wand, I would create a series for heavyweights. I kind of auto-suggested it to him. But my thing is, why aren't they doing it? And I said, do you not feel you wish that Turki Al-Sheikh had said to you, here's the money, create a series in America and go to NFL, go to basketball, go to baseball even, go to track and fields, go to all the sports and find the best, biggest guys to fight in a tournament and see if 2 or 3 guys emerge from it. And he said, yeah, I'd love to do that. But they should be doing that. If anything, that's what Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh should be doing. They should be finding heavyweights because he recognises that without a heavyweight division, you don't attract the mainstream audience. When Oscar was in his pomp, Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield were still around. Riddick Bowe was still around. So you had these brilliant mid-weight fighters, Mayorgas, the Mosleys, the Bernard Hopkins, all these guys, Tito Trinidad, all these guys, as well as the heavyweights. And it is sadly missing in America at the moment. And he could be the guy to rescue it. And as he said, he made a plea to DAZN to change that. And it does need to happen because...
Yeah, and even below the big names you just mentioned, the big heavyweight names, you had names like Oliver McCall, Hasim Rahman. It literally was littered with big heavyweights that, as you say, sold the biggest cards and put bums on seats. But I genuinely believe, even without the Turkey money, and even without DAZN, I do believe that Oscar could set up his own, doesn't have to be a big prize fund, of just finding the next heavyweight, almost like the Dana White Contender Series.
Exactly.
Sort of an in-house tournament where you find the next big guys. Fabio Wardley should inspire a lot of these guys to put on some gloves and start throwing hands.
Exactly. And, if we're sitting here thinking this, surely the promoters could think this. And the problem is, HBO with Don King in the mid to late 80s, that tournament found Mike Tyson and made him undisputed champion. Between 86 and 90, we had a global star. and it's time for America to do it again. They're capable of doing it. And I don't think they should sit in the shadow. Look what happened at the weekend. Look what a damp squib Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gann was in the UFC. There was so much anticipation for it. And due to an eye poke, and I'm not denigrating the UFC because it's an enormous sporting weapon, if you like, a sporting arsenal. It's extraordinary, and I have great admiration for what the Fertittas and Dana White have achieved in the sport. And it's a Goliath in sporting terms. But the heavyweight scene in the UFC is not dominating the world. The heavyweight scene is in boxing right now, and it's Europe and it's UK and Eastern Europe. That's it. You know, America has got the biggest, strongest, fastest athletes in the world. I'm sure I could watch two gridiron games and go, there's 4 guys I've just seen there who, the way they go into each other, they're built like Fabio Wardley, if not bigger. And I'm sure they're capable of doing it. Whether they want to do it is another thing. But hopefully I've lit a fire under him in the interview, because he did get really excited about the thought of it. And I think I'd like to see them all doing it in America, because we're missing something at the moment. And as he said, the Vegas nights are different to everything else. When we're in Vegas for a week, I don't think there's anything like it, because you're there and
there's nothing even remotely close to a Vegas event. Nothing even like, it's Vegas and then there's everything else.
I agree.
Like, you could argue what is second. Like, nothing beats a Vegas fight week. It's just the greatest thing ever. But we are getting less and less of those Vegas fight weeks now. Like, for example, this card coming up, and I think it's an incredible card. This Ring 4 card, that would be a Vegas card. I mean, look at what that has everything on it. I mean, Benavidez on it, Haney, Jesse Bam Rodriguez. That would at least be on the East Coast or the West Coast. It could be anywhere, actually, in America, that fight card. So it is missing those. You know, it's very interesting. You mentioned Virgil Ortiz being his number one charge. Virgil Ortiz hasn't even been a world champion yet. Just realised.
Yeah, but I do think he's a stud at 154. And he's just got incredible. I'm not sure he beats Boots Ennis, but it's a fight I really want to see. And it's a fight that should happen in Las Vegas. Fights in the Mojave Desert have always been special, because it's contained and it's in there. And even though Frank Warren may not agree with me on this, Eddie Hearn may not agree with me on this, there'd be nothing wrong with taking some of these big heavyweight fights that we've got over here at the moment and inculcating them into Las Vegas events and getting the fans to travel for them, and having 2 or 3 of the heavyweights on the cards, heavyweight fights. I mean, going over there for Saul Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford a couple of months back really did remind me, because we don't go there enough now. And you know, that Allegiant Stadium event was incredible. It went up a level, and some of these heavyweight fights, if we could make the heavyweights famous in America, there'd be more Allegiant Stadium fights in Las Vegas, and we need it.
Yeah, just give me a few MGM and T-Mobile for now, so I can go and have a cigar, wander around the casinos, and everyone gets dressed up in their absolute best. Honestly, it's fight week. It's not fight night in America or in Vegas. It's fight week. It really is. It is crazy. Big fight this weekend in Manchester. talkSPORT will be there. So myself and you will be there. The whole team will be there. Joshua Buatsi versus Zach Parker is the main headline. Lyndon Arthur versus Bradley Ray, chief support. So it is really a card positioned to the light heavyweights. And I guess we need to see what Buatsi's got left. I think he's got a lot left, but we were both there for the Callum Smith fight, and that took a lot out of him. That was a brutal fight, that was. And now he drops down a level, I think it's fair to say, to then eventually push back up. So it'll be interesting to see if Buatsi still has what I think he has, which is mean intentions, and a bit like Fabio Wardley, one hell of a chip.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of Buatsi's great performances against Callum Smith as well, by the way, as was Callum Smith. I think it's the best I've ever seen him. Buatsi's 19-1 in his career. That loss to Callum in Riyadh in February, he will want to get over. But Parker's 26-1. He had one bad night at super middleweight. I think it was super middle. It might have been light heavy against John Ryder. I think it was super middle still.
Super middle.
It was at super middle. He had a bad night that night. But other than that, he's looked good and strong. And he's a big man, Zach. I think it's a really good fight. If Joshua isn't on his mettle, Buatsi isn't on his mettle, this is going to be a difficult night. But it's a great fight. It's a real test. I think Buatsi is the marginal favourite. And as you say, it's Parker's second fight at 175. The other fight, Brad Ray, he's come all the way up from middleweight, trained by Ricky Hatton in the beginning. I remember meeting Brad up in the Hatton gym, to mention Ricky again, who will never leave our minds. I spoke to his mother yesterday. Carol had a long chat to Carol, and they're still in a terrible mess, the family, over Ricky's passing. Brad Ray will be a test for Lyndon Arthur if the right Lyndon Arthur doesn't turn up on the night. Obviously, he's lost 2 of his last 3 to Dimitri Bivol and Anthony Yarde. Lyndon Arthur got that victory over Liam Cameron in the middle of those. So it's a really good European light heavyweight title fight, that. Really looking forward to it. Looking forward to being in Mank for another big fight night.
Yeah, I actually thought Lyndon Arthur did really well against Anthony Yarde.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you can only do what you can do against Dimitri Bivol. So it's not been a bad recent run, I don't think, for Lyndon Arthur. And there are so many good domestic light heavyweight fights. We saw Ezra Taylor on the weekend, potentially a Ben Whittaker fight, maybe Willie Hutchinson. So this is the right time to win a European light heavyweight title fight. Very quickly on Buatsi, 19-1, 20 fights just doesn't sound like a lot of fights, does it, for Buatsi? Like, what was it? A 2016 Olympian, Buatsi, wasn't it? 9 years, 20 fights in 8.5 years. Am I being harsh?
No, we've always said that about him, that it's been a very... And you talk to him about it and he says, no, all happens at the right time for the right reason.
Yeah.
Literally those words. You know what he's like. He's as cool as a cucumber. Always is. He's a very lovable man, is Joshua Buatsi, whose name I now say correctly after learning it for years. It's taken 9 years to say it right. But... you know, it was a bad moment for him losing to Callum Smith. But he just came up against a guy who technically found more angles against him than he could deal with. The Smiths won't like me saying this, but I scored that a draw, by the way, that fight. Even though Steve Gray scored it 119-110, I think, to Smith. It was an all-action fight, if you recall. And I thought there were a lot of swing rounds in that bout. All the eye-catching highlights were from Callum, you know, dipping his body and throwing those punches. He was brilliant. But it's a very, very important fight for Joshua Buatsi if he wants to get back up into that Anthony Yarde, Ben Whittaker in some ways, as you say, Ezra Taylor coming through, but that David Benavidez, Dimitri Bivol, Artur Beterbiev mix. And we still haven't seen Buatsi and Yarde. So, and obviously Yarde is up against, is it Benavidez next?
It is Benavidez,
but we still need
November
to see
22nd.
Buatsi and Yarde. So, you know, for the purposes of the division, we need Buatsi to win on Saturday night.
You know what we need to see, and we'll wrap on this? We need to see Alexander Usyk make a video and say, yep, it was a great fight, Fabio. Congratulations on your performance. I'll see you in the summer, my friend. That's what we need. I know a couple of days ago he said he's, going to continue, but that might have been on the idea of Joseph Parker winning. I think we need him to confirm now that he is going to fight a certain Fabio Wardley, and I think that's what we need.
The silence right now, I'm afraid, Mr. Oda,
is definite.
There you go. I rest my case.